Hi, my name is Ben Hutchinson, and I'm talking about evaluation gaps in machine learning practice. Now, this paper is really inspired by three very simple questions. Firstly, why evaluate machine learned models? Secondly, in practice, how are machine learned models evaluated? And thirdly, ideally, how should machine learned models be evaluated? Now, we realize that in practice, assumptions will need to be made and simplifications. We realize that in practice, ideals can never be met. But we think it's important to acknowledge that when making assumptions, we introduce gaps into our knowledge between what it is we want to know about a model and what it is we end up knowing about a model. And we think this is important for this audience because these knowledge gaps can have moral consequences. To the first question, why evaluate machine learned models? Well, in part, the most important part of this question is the asking of it, because it presupposes that there can be different reasons why people might evaluate machine learned models. And in the paper, we talk about two possible reasons. You might want to learn about a new learning algorithm's performance. For example, you might have a new model architecture you want to explore. But equally validly, but very differently, you might want to evaluate a model in order to determine whether it is appropriate for use in an application within some given ecosystem. And so acknowledging there are multiple possible reasons is really the important part. To explore the second question of how models are evaluated in practice, we looked at 200 research papers from the fields of natural language processing and computer vision. We found that the most common type of evaluation, the archetypal evaluation, reported model accuracy on test data with the same distribution as the training data. We found the reporting of epistemic uncertainty, such as confidence intervals or error bars, was uncommon. Also uncommon was the analysis, the systematic analysis of errors made by the model, as well as doing sliced or disaggregated analyses, such as those that may be used to explore subgroup biases. Regarding ideals of how models should be evaluated, we argue that the how of a model evaluation should depend on the why. In other words, the why is prior to the how. We argue it's important to establish and document the why. What are the gaps that can arise between the is and the ought of model evaluations? In the paper, we discuss 6 different assumptions that we think can commonly be made, either implicitly or explicitly, when evaluating models. These are consequentialism, abstractability from context, what we call input myopia, quantitative modeling assumptions, assumptions about the equivalence of failures, and test data validity. And we argue that each of these assumptions has gaps in terms, explicit gaps in terms of what is lost or minimized in the process. We argue in the paper that it's important to document the motivations for an evaluation, as well as documenting the stakeholders. We argue that it's important to document the assumptions made in an evaluation because there will inevitably be assumptions that separate the practice from the ideal. And because you're making assumptions, there will inevitably be gaps as to what is being minimized or lost or underexplored. And we argue for supplementing your primary evaluation with additional information which may help to fill in those gaps. And it goes without saying for this audience that part of doing that involves evaluating for bias, sensitivity, robustness, and safety. Thank you.